Some podcasts I've been on, they send me questions ahead of time. And I actually prefer when I rarely have guests on mine, but when I do, I prefer to just see wherever it goes. I kind of have a few questions, but.
Yeah, like I know that so with you being a music teacher and my music teacher and also being military, like I know there's certain topics that it would be fun to talk about. But so it's not like entirely like, oh, we end up talking about underwater basket weaving or whatever. So we actually go somewhere, but I don't know. It's cool to
we should talk about underwater basket weaving because about 90% of college grads, that's what they're majoring in these days.
Yeah, that and gender studies, and those are fun.
Underwater gender studies.
Yeah, I mean, we're rolling, so we can just go. So that's staying
so I'm going to see some clips, some crazy clips.
Yeah, about you roasting all the college people now. Do you think it's changed since like you were considering college?
I think it's totally changed because I think people were more, I don't know, like college was there was a reason you went to college. It's like, I need this degree to do this, so I'm going to go to college. And it seems like it's changed to where a lot of people were just going to college. Like even at Falcon High School, when we were both there, it seemed like the counselors were pushing people, like everyone's got to go to college.
Yeah.
And
I felt that.
And it's not for everybody. I mean, we had a plumber come in, what was it, about 2 years ago? We were having a little leak in our basement. And so he comes in, he looks at it for a little bit, and he's like, well, this is what's happening with it. And I could do it right now for you. It'll take me about an hour and it'll be $550.
Oh my goodness.
And so it was worth it to us to pay him though. I don't know if he made all that money, but it was worth it. And I was thinking it was a kid, like you're a kid to me. It was someone your age and he probably was working for a company. I don't remember now.
Okay.
But the point is he was still like, he was very professional. He knew what he was doing. I had no clue about the plumbing or why it was leaking, and he fixed it. And now it's a couple of years later, it's still fixed.
Yeah. I wonder if the company he works for, if his boss has a college degree or if he just kind of.
I would think that he probably doesn't.
Really? You think he just climbed the ladder? He started as doing the hard work and then.
Yeah. And then had too much. If you do the quality work, you're going to have so much business a lot of times that then you can't do it all yourself. And then you hire employees. So, I mean, he probably, there's a difference between a college degree and education. And I'm a strong proponent of education. It's very important to continue to be educated. And sometimes that will be in a college degree. And most of the time it's not. It's through, you could take courses, you could take seminars, you could read books, you could learn on the job, you could learn from somebody. Or take an online course or take a course in college. So I'm not against anything. It's just that path being the only way to further your education.
What do you think the ideal education system is? Because it seems like the standard right now is you send your kids to a 8-hour school or 7-hour, I guess. Like you send them to school for a day.
I don't think that there's an ideal one. So I'm at a charter school now. I retired from full-time teaching and I teach half-time at a charter school. And I really love charter schools. I really believe in it. I love the mission of this particular school. But even our marketing director, when she puts out posts and memes about our school, she even says, it's not for everybody, but here's the things we do at our school and why it might benefit your child. So I think there's the more variety we have, the better it is for kids.
What is the difference between a charter school and a normal?
So a charter school usually you get a charter that's like the official thing from the state allowing you to run. But I think the main difference is it's a lot more locally run because you end up with a board of parents and people who are in that community who are making the decisions.
So is it different than a private school?
The difference would be the charter school still gets its funding from the government versus a private school. It's going to be tuition.
So it's kind of like a homeschool, but mixed with public school? Is that kind of what's going on?
Private school, but with public funding.
Okay.
I don't even know if that. So people don't pay tuition to go there. We have a limit of the number of students, and so once we reach our max because of the capacity of our building and because of the number of teachers we have, then we can't accept any more students. And so I know, like our school, 6th grade for next year was going to be totally full, and we couldn't take any more. But we had openings for every other grade.
Okay. What's the benefit, I guess, of that? Is it the parents have more say? Is that kind of
I think the parents have more say. So like the thing that attracted me to this particular school is the very first thing in their statement of objectives is that the parent is the first and most important part of a child's education. And in public education, I've seen that disappear in many cases. Yeah. And so I read that and it's like, okay, if they really believe that's my school.
It seems like teachers they feel like they have too much of a say in what your kids should be learning.
The teachers have too much of a say?
They're all activists now, it seems like, and they've taken on this responsibility of making sure that your kid grows up learning people's pronouns and learning the right way to be like super sensitive to how people feel. I don't know. It's just, I wouldn't raise my kids that way.
You know, I just want to caution you though, don't use the all, because
I know you were like that.
I wasn't like that at all. And so I would say not even the majority of teachers, and it's different everywhere, every school you go, everywhere you go, it's going to be a little bit different. But the previous school I was at before this one, I'd say probably about half the teachers took that approach, and the other half didn't. And some of them are just quiet about it or do what they think is best no matter what.
Yeah, but the ones who aren't quiet about it are pretty loud, it seems like. The ones who are the few, maybe, do seem to make the most noise, if that makes sense.
I think you're right, especially in the last few years. It's gotten worse.
Yeah. So how long have you been teaching? 20 years?
I just finished my 26th year.
Wow. Okay. And so how has it changed from the beginning? How did you even start? Did you start as a music teacher, or
I started thinking I'm never going to teach, and I'll tell you why. I'll go back up to, I spent 10 years in the Army band before that.
Yeah.
And in the Army band, there were a lot of former music teachers, and they just talked badly about it. They're like, don't ever go into teaching, that you'll hate it. I loved the students, but I hated everything else about my job. And that's why they ended up in the Army band. And so when I got out of the Army band, I was a self-employed musician a couple of years, and I thought I'm never going to teach. Well, it turned out I wasn't quite making the money I needed to make. Yeah. And my neighbor was a principal at a private school, and he said, well, we have this part-time band teacher job. Are you interested? And because it was part-time and because I was hurting financially, I took the job, and I found out I loved it.
What did you love about it then?
I can't describe it. I think I was
the
working in the way that God has gifted me. So I have a teacher's heart, and music is the thing I'm the strongest at. So that's the place I feel the most comfortable. But I immediately I knew that I loved it. I loved the students. I loved seeing them get it and go from, I'll never be able to play an instrument, to playing hot cross buns and then playing cool jazz songs like you do, and see that progression happening throughout that. So that was probably what got me. And it made me realize, though, that those former colleagues of mine, they weren't meant to be teachers.
Right. So you started, what grade were you starting with?
It was 4th through 8th grade.
Oh, wow. So it was like playing on the recorder was like
No, it was band. So I had 4th grade beginning band.
Gosh, that must have been
middle
terrible.
School band. Well, that's funny that you say that, because I think that this is probably a gift that to help me in the career of my choosing. The teachers used to say, how can you you were a professional musician, how can you
it's
stand
insulting.
this? And I thought that they sounded great to me. And I think what it was, it's like a gift from God. I'm not hearing what they are today. I'm hearing what they can become, like you.
Okay.
And so when when I've gone back and listened to some of those recordings and I can't picture a student to that recording anymore. I'm like, this sounds like crap.
That's really interesting.
But then after a couple of years, then they sound really good.
Wow. Okay.
And actually, it doesn't even take a couple of years, but at the very beginning, everybody sounds bad.
There's huge improvement within the first month. And then the first year is that, at least for me, I remember playing with my mouthpiece upside down just to see what it was like. And then learning,
And then right finally after a year, you learned that was the wrong way.
I flipped it back over. Yeah. I'd switched my hands. Wow. So I guess I did notice that with you being my teacher there was a few teachers that I could tell were like invested in the students, and then some who were like, I'm just here because this is where I work. And so I remember you used to go on actual, what would you call it? When you like would go and travel and do courses or something where people would teach you how to be a better music teacher pretty much.
Oh yeah. I went to I still do. I go to different conferences and usually you get a menu of different sessions you can attend. And it's like, oh, here, what are some areas I'm weak in, so I can try to get better at teaching that area.
Yeah, and then you would come back and show us what you learned.
Really?
Yeah,
I don't remember doing
Or you
that.
would you would let us conduct, and you would teach us more than just there is to playing an instrument, you know? And then made us do push-ups. But
you got pretty good at those push-ups, Carlos.
Yeah. I had to do a lot of them. Yeah, for sure. Oh my goodness. We won't go there. But yeah, there was a lot of teachers who I just felt like they weren't investing their free time. Because how much of your free time was just reinvesting back into being a band teacher?
So those conferences were like, I was able to take professional development days off. So we got a couple of those every year. But in the summer, I probably would use about 5 or 6 days in the summer to go to different conferences. And those weren't paid or anything.
And after school, you would do marching band, which I'm sure they probably compensated you.
It came to about $6 an hour.
Yeah. That sounds right. And then travel for marching band or jazz band or whatever it was, doing competitions and stuff. Like that is a lot of your time.
There was quite a bit of time that was like not required, that I could have like eliminated all those things and I wouldn't have been in danger of losing my job or anything.
Right.
And so there was quite a bit, but I enjoyed it all.
Yeah. That's cool. I mean, I didn't see that with, I won't say any other teacher, but most of the other teachers. I know there's a couple that I can think of that seemed like they really cared about the students too. And they did extra, instead of just, here's what I got in the curriculum. I'm going to teach you guys that. You get your textbook and then you're off to your next class. I'll give you homework. Like there's a lot more with band. I remember you would play in the hall too. You weren't getting paid extra to play music in the hallway.
No, wasn't getting paid extra for that.
And then I would join you and ruin it.
That was really cool. And so I still do that I don't play in the hallway at the school I'm at now, but once a month I play in the lunchroom, all the way from the kindergartners up through middle school.
You must be the coolest person then.
Of course I am.
I was the coolest person. I carried that on after you left.
Really?
Yeah. I would play in the hallway, and then everyone knew me as like you're the guy who plays in the hallway. But yeah, I think that's something that I don't know if most music teachers do that, or maybe it is. Maybe they have like the creative mind and maybe their mind is just different. Music teachers are different than other teachers. I don't know.
I think everybody's got to do. Like someone shouldn't do that because I do it.
Right.
But that's part of my personality. I love performing. That's how I started my career. And now I'm back to performing quite a bit more than I was doing when I was teaching full time. But I think sometimes people buttonhole themselves into a certain way of doing things, even creative people. And it's like, no, you need to get out of that. So I don't know if you knew this about me. My undergrad degree is actually in business administration. And so I took a lot of marketing classes and I thought, how do I put that to band? And sometimes it wasn't even stuff to purposely market, but it ended up working that way. So the first school I taught at was a private school and it was a K through 12. school. So just as a fun way to this, I had the students right after their lunch. So I would go have lunch with them and I would bring a trumpet or sax or clarinet or some instrument in there with me. And the signal for them to empty your trays and hurry up and get to the band room was I would play something on one of the instruments.
Really?
And so the unintentional positive thing to that is that I became the cool guy with all these young kids. And then they wanted to be in band when they got to fourth grade.
Wow.
And so it's like, oh, I didn't even think of it as a marketing. That wasn't my main intent with that, but it created this marketing thing and this desire to be in band.
That's cool. How many instruments do you play, or do you know? I won't say know well. I'll just say, how many could you play at least hot cross buns on?
I would say all of the band instruments and all of the orchestra instruments.
Really?
I could at least play hot cross buns, except maybe bassoon.
Okay. Do you think most band teachers are that way?
Yeah. Okay. One of the things in the normal undergrad thing, one of the classes you take is called like music techniques class or something like that. So you'll learn the techniques of the brass instrument, the techniques of the woodwind instrument, the techniques of the string instrument. You don't become expert on it, but you kind of learn the basic fundamentals so that you can then teach it to students.
And how many do you think you're at least good at? Not just like, I know how to play simple things.
Good at, like, define good.
Let's say, so your saxophone level is like up here, and then your bassoon level is down here. How many are like close
to the saxophone?
Up on the upper level.
So obviously all the saxophones, and then clarinet I think would be like half of the way towards saxophone.
It's pretty similar.
And then guitar, I've been teaching a beginning guitar class. So what I tell people is that I'm an expert beginning guitarist. And so everything that I need to teach the students in the first year, like I can do that. But the students who are serious about guitar and studied some on their own, they passed me up after about 6 months.
Yeah. I saw that because I took your guitar class, and there were some students who really were into it, and then others who just liked to do what you were showing. So that checks out. Yeah, I know sax pretty much. That's all I know right now. But I tried French horn for a little bit, and my parents hated me because we were out in the forest, which helped because I could go outside. But yeah, they thought it was the worst.
Was that before saxophone or after?
That was after.
After saxophone?
I was going to start on violin, and then I switched schools and went to Falcon Middle School, and they didn't have string instruments. So
That's interesting.
Yeah, so then I learned the saxophone, and otherwise I would have been a violinist.
So don't hate me as a fellow saxophonist now.
Uh-oh.
Every time I listen to Yo-Yo Ma, I cry when I hear him playing. And it's like if I could say a prayer and God would instantly make me as good on cello as I am on saxophone, and it would mean I'd have to lose the saxophone ability, I would do it.
I love the cello so much because I think it's a similar attraction that I have to the tenor, I think, because it's similar to the human voice.
Yeah.
I think that's what's appealing because the cello, it sounds like someone's singing. Like that's what I love about it. And the saxophone, I think that you can play it smoothly enough to where it's the same register as like a human voice.
Would you trade that gift on saxophone?
Ooh, I think my cheeks would thank me. I don't know if my fingers would be happy, but because if I stop playing for a little bit, like I can only play for 15 minutes and then my face gets tired.
I think the same thing would happen though with the cello.
My face would get tired.
Your face wouldn't get tired, but something would get tired.
Yeah,
I do some 3-hour gigs now, and the last half hour I can really feel it. Like the last half hour, I'm just tired. I try to pick songs that have a lot of rests in them. And
goodness, what do you think that there's more benefit to learning music, especially as a student? Do you think there's more benefit to it than just learning an instrument?
Definitely. So I've had students tell me in the past, they said, Mr. Vine, you're not just teaching us music, you're teaching us about life. It's all about, I think the main thing is the perseverance, especially for like your generation and younger, there's so much instant things with gamification of things, and you can reach high levels and become an expert at a game and
Yeah.
almost like instantly, if you spend a week or two on it. And learning an instrument is a slogging process at the beginning.
Yeah.
The first 2 weeks, we're not even doing hot cross buns yet. We're like, here's how you play this note. Oh no, you didn't quite
sit at the edge
push
of your
right
chair.
buttons.
Yeah. That's and you can't like. There's no cheat codes. You can't spend extra money and get better that way. Like you have to actually.
You have to actually do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else do you think? Do you think there's a benefit to like your mental health at all besides that? Because I feel like it was calming for me.
I think it could be for me. I can only say it for myself in this case, but for me, when I play my saxophone, I can say things I can't say with words. Is the best way for me to describe it.
You sound like a jazz musician. I feel like that's why people play jazz, is because they say, I can't talk good. So you have a podcast.
I do.
And what do it's music teacher advice or something?
I just changed the name of it for years. I've been doing it for 14 years, and it was called the Music Ed Podcast.
Music Ed Podcast.
But as you know, when you post your stuff, sometimes people complain about the silliest things. So I've had some people send me complaints, and they said, you call it the Music Ed Podcast, but you're like always talking about band. And so they were right in a way, but it's like, okay, just go to another podcast. If it bothers you.
Like, I keep listening and thinking it's Music Ed, but you're not.
And so I changed the name of it about 2 months ago, and now it's called Almost Everything I've Learned About Teaching Band.
Okay. And what do you talk about? Almost everything.
Yeah. So it's mainly geared to teachers in their first 5 years. And it's things that you probably didn't learn in college because they just didn't have time to teach you, or they were focusing too much on unimportant things or something, but things that you missed out on in college. So it's things, most of them are things I learned the hard way through teaching, and then hopefully can impart that wisdom. But I'm working on, it's interesting because at this juncture in life where I'm half retired, I'm not retired for real, just retired from full-time teaching.
You don't think you'll ever fully retire, right?
I don't think I'll ever fully retire. But I'm working on a book by the same name called Almost Everything I've Learned About Teaching Band. And so that's going to become the podcast, and the podcast is going to become the book, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So they're going to be kind of intertwined with each other.
Is that good for all teachers, you think, or just music teachers?
There's a lot of things that could be good for all teachers, because there's a lot of things where I talk about classroom discipline, grading policies. So I learned this from the coaches. There used to be a coach that I worked with in the first school I taught at, and I really loved how he was the science teacher and the soccer and basketball coach. But I used to not lose my temper, but I would kind of whine with students, for lack of a better word. Like, didn't I tell you if you did this, I was going to give you detention? And why are you doing this? And then, you know what the typical middle schooler was like, I don't know. And so I learned from him, because I'd watch him do the same thing. And he was very calm, and he'd say, hey, I told you if you did that, I'd give you detention. And he's writing it out, and then he hands him the detention. Then he'd say, oh, let's go play ball. And there was no emotion at all. And it's I need to get to that point, because the emotion wasn't doing anything except getting the students worked up along with me.
Right.
And it didn't make them behave better.
Wow.
It was easier to just issue the consequence to whatever they were doing and move forward from that. And so I think a lot of teachers make that mistake. And another thing that I noticed is that coaches, they don't if you're a soccer coach and someone tries to shoot the ball into the goal, they're practicing shooting. You don't analyze their shooting and say, oh, I'm going to give you a 70% on that. You didn't make the goal, but it's a C minus. So you get a C. They're like, get back in line and do it again until you get it right. So their standard is 100%. They're not like, I'm going to give you a grade. It's like, this is the standard. You're going to keep practicing it till you get it. And when I changed that in my grading practices, it was life-changing for my students and for me. And so very rarely do I have any students who don't have an A. And it's not because it's an easy A, because I tell them that. I said, it's not easy. It's not an easy A, but it's easy to get an A. And I only give 2 grades, A+ and redo. And so I'm thinking, if we did that in all the classes, if we said, here's the minimum standard you need to do to pass your math, you need to get it to this level. Oh, you didn't get it? Okay, we're going to give you more practice till you get it to that level. I think it would be, instead, what do some teachers do? Not all, but some, oh, you got a C-. Well, how can I get better? I don't know, study more. And they don't really like work on the fundamentals with that student.
Wow. I think a lot of the things that you're talking about, I'm like, it's giving me flashbacks to you being my teacher.
Yeah, I think I was already doing all those things.
Yeah, I think especially like hey, you're talking, do push-ups or whatever. You know, it wasn't like, it wasn't a conversation. It wasn't like, hey, you crazy, you need to stop talking in my class and all this. It was just like, hey.
Like, here's the consequence. I told you.
Yep.
And I don't do push-ups anymore, only because some people look at it as corporal punishment now.
Oh my goodness.
Corporal punishment is illegal. But it was effective because I thought it was a pain. And I know, like, for you, it was a pain to do them, but like, I wasn't calling your parents. It was like a minor thing. It's like, do this, then we can both move on. And I didn't keep a record of it. I didn't say, Carlos, this is the 427th time you've done push-ups this school year.
It was probably at least that. Yeah. That was a good guess. Yeah. That makes sense. Cause otherwise the teachers are just going to say, go to the office seems like the go-to. I got sent to the office a lot by other teachers.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did you
really?
Oh yeah. And see, I can't imagine that. It's like, Carlos was a good student. I mean, he was a normal,
I was a boy.
Freshman, and
I was a boy. I think I talked a lot, and I think you've talked about this a little bit. How schools are very much designed for girls rather than boys.
Yeah,
and I think
really are.
When I look back, you were talking to me about that, and I realized, wow, all those times that I got in trouble in school, it wasn't because I was like being I wasn't just being super crazy. I was just like talking, or I was fidgeting with something. Like, and that's just how I was. Is I always felt like playing cards were my thing. I was always playing with playing cards. I don't know if that was an issue in your class. Probably not, because I had an instrument in my hands that I could at least, fidget with. But in other classes, I'd have playing cards. I was like shuffling them, and teachers would take it away. I'd open my backpack, pull out another pack, and I'm like, I could play this all day. And then they would send me to the office, or I would
for shuffling your cards.
Yeah, it was like when they could have just told me to do push-ups or something. I don't know. I also liked to ask a lot of questions, and teachers didn't seem to like that. Like, especially in math, I would always be like, why does that make sense? And they're like, I don't know, just this is an equation, memorize it. And I'm like, well, tell me. Like, and then I would waste all the class time. Everyone else would just be mad at me because I'm trying to understand something that they're not explaining, because that's how my mind worked.
Then that's what teaching's supposed to be. If you're not understanding something, you should be able to ask a question about it and get some help with that. I think some teachers, they're trying to push forward because someone has said, you need to get through this curriculum by this amount of time. And I think that was the advantage I had with music, is that nobody was telling me what to do with that. And so if a song didn't work out, we just wouldn't do that song. I'd find another song that would work for us that year. Some years the students were able to do more difficult music.
Yeah.
Some years maybe not so much. And trying to find that. But I feel for some of the classroom teachers, because a lot of times the district, and sometimes even at the state level, it's like, this is what you're going to teach. By day 3, you should do this. By day 12, you should do this. And it doesn't work. That doesn't account for the individuals in front of you, the different abilities. And there's nothing wrong with having that goal. It's like in the music field, we do have some standards that have been set, and it's like, in an ideal situation, you're going to do all these things. You're going to cover the the history of music. You're going to cover improv. You're going to
Right.
cover all this. And some teachers are like, there's no way I can do that. I see my students twice a week. And it's like, okay, that doesn't mean, as long as you don't have a bad administrator who then tries to say, well, you didn't cover all these things,
Yeah.
then you do what you can with the students you have and the time you have that year.
Yeah. So you tailor it. You think a good teacher would tailor a little bit more to
Right.
their, which is harder with larger classes too, I'm sure. Like because I was a student in a class of 30 most of the time, or band was even more, is closer to 50 or 60. But I would have a hard time feeling like I could ask a question, because what if I feel like I'm the only one with that question? You know, what if all these other kids just think I'm stupid and I'm the only one who doesn't get it? Now we have to spend the next 10 minutes explaining it for me. I think that's,
I bet you though that there were others who
yeah,
didn't understand that.
probably. And I think that's why I didn't personally struggle with that. That's why I just argue with the teacher for half an hour about something. And it was usually the math teacher, because not that I had a hard time with math, but I wanted to understand it, because I thought math makes sense. And so it needs to make sense in my mind. What are the big things you think that make a good teacher?
I think, first of all, someone who loves the students. I think that's very important.
What do you mean by that?
To look at them as, that's a good question. I think if you look at them as created by God and that they're unique people, it's not like this is just my class or this is just my students that I have this year, but each of them is a unique person with unique gifts, unique abilities, unique goals, unique circumstances that have happened in their lives, and look at them as individuals. And then secondly, be knowledgeable in your field. And then I think the third thing is to be very full of grace, especially if you're teaching middle school or boys, to just don't let the behaviors, like, don't take them personally.
Hmm.
I'll give you an example of like caring about the student versus
Like the grade or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a student at Falcon, when I think it was someone who was there at the same time that you were. And she came in and at the end of the first day, she's like, Mr. Vine, thank you for not being like everybody else. I enjoyed our first day. It was like the first day of school. And I said, well, what did I do differently? I don't think I did anything special.
Huh.
And she said, well, the other teachers, they were just like, these are my rules. This is my grading policy. Da, da, da.
Yep.
And she said, when we came into your class, you were like, oh, how was your summer? You know, how's life going? Haven't seen you in a while. It's good to see you.
That's radical.
And I didn't think it was radical. But I guess for her it was. And I thought, don't all the teachers do that?
No, you know what? Now that I think of it, that did make a big difference in how I perceived class, even. Like,
wow.
the teachers that would say, that thing that happened to you last week or whatever, like, how is that? Are the ones who actually cared. So love, what do you not mean by love? Because I think that it can get a little dangerous.
I think a lot of people want to be friends with their students. And the way I describe it, it's like that word friend, it's crazy in our culture today because people have 3,000 Facebook friends.
Yeah.
But a friend is actually someone, if you're in prison, you can call and say, hey, can you come bail me out and pick me up? That's like a true friend.
Yeah.
But and people probably just have 2 or 3 of those that are really deep friends like that. So, but what I tell students is that my first part of our relationship is I'm your teacher. And so I'm looking at where you're going to be in 10 years. And if that means that you hate me right now, but I know it's going to make you a better 25-year-old, then I'm willing to take that chance of you hating me.
A lot of students hated you.
Did they really?
I think so.
Well, I got to tell you this story then, because this happened probably at least a handful of times.
Yeah.
Where there were some students that they came to band, and 9th grade year, we're just like button heads like that every single day. And I'm writing them up and calling them home. And they actually tell me, I hate you. I hate band. And they drop band after a semester.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I was sad that it happened that way. And
Yeah.
then, they go on with their rest of their high school, and then they join the military or go and do something else. And they come back when they're 19 or 20 and they're visiting the campus, and they come back and they see me and they say, Mr. Devine, you were my favorite teacher. I was like, you have a weird way of showing it.
Yeah.
And that bugged me though. It's like, wait, if it had just happened once, I wouldn't have thought of it. But I can think of at least 5 times where that happened.
Yeah.
And I I never asked them about it, but I just kind of thought, it's like, how could I be their favorite teacher after they dropped band? They told me they hated me. They hated my class.
Yeah.
After they left my class, I never saw them again. And I finally decided what it probably was is that I held them to a high standard. And so that shows care.
Yeah.
And students may not like to admit it, but they like to have standards set for them. They're not going to ever say that or write an essay about it and say, "Oh, I love that. My
It's just,
teachers have
yeah.
high standards for me." But
It's inherent.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what made the difference in those cases. I remember in a couple, especially in guitar class, I would occasionally have a few students who didn't care,
Hmm.
and they would try to sit in the back and not do anything, and I wouldn't let them get away with that. And oftentimes that student would get in trouble with me, and eventually the counselors or admin would be involved. And sometimes the counselors and admin didn't see it. They're like, I don't understand. He doesn't get in trouble in any of his other classes. And it's because they would let him put his head down and go to sleep and not do anything.
Yeah.
And I didn't let that. It's like, you're in my class, you're gonna do something.
Yeah.
And that's what brought us to
Radical.
Once again, I don't think it's that radical. It's just a difference in philosophy, because I've heard some people say, well, if they don't care, I can't make them care. But I took it as my job, as if they don't care, I'm their teacher. I'm going to try to make them care.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, if they don't care, there's a reason they don't. And I want to figure it out so that they do. Yeah. I'm looking back and seeing me in guitar class and you yelling at the kids in the back.
I didn't yell
making
at
them do push-ups and pull-ups.
I didn't yell at them.
No, you calmly say, "Hey, why aren't you playing? Come on, join us. Can you play?" Or you would call someone out and say, "Hey, play this section here," and they can't, and you say, "Okay, practice it." I remember you calling people out.
That's weird that you remember that.
Yeah.
That unfortunately, that calling people out thing is radical these days.
Yeah. Oh
I never thought of it as radical. But my philosophy, and still today, my philosophy is, if I give you 2 minutes to practice and you're not using that time, that must mean you have it down already. So I want to hear you so I can make sure it's not anything bad. And sometimes, occasionally, I do have a student and they're like, okay, blah, 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 and they play it perfectly. And it's like, okay, I guess you didn't need that practice. But more often than not, it's people who needed it.
Yeah. No, I see. You wouldn't take it personally at all. You would just, it was literally, I'm here to teach you how to play this song or whatever. You're here to learn guitar. And if you're not learning it, then you
I got to figure out why you're not learning it. If it's something that I'm doing wrong, I need to change that. If it's because you're not putting the effort, you need to change that. Because sometimes sometimes you do get students and they're like, well, I don't understand. If they missed the first day and we said, here's string 1 and here's a fret. And they're like,
what's a
you
string?
said push fret 3 and I don't know what that means. Okay, well, now we figured it out and I can help you if that's the real reason why you're not participating.
Yeah. And sometimes you would find out they're just lazy.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm also thinking of when you're talking about like them hating you maybe in the moment, but later appreciating it. That sounds a lot like parenting.
It is. I think being a teacher is very similar to parenting. I don't know if most teachers look at it that way.
Probably not. I mean, yeah, I don't think so. Because if, as a parent, you're invested in your kids and in their success. And I think that can be unhealthy too, because you don't want to put your value in how well they perform or anything like that, because that can get dangerous. You want your kid to do all these extracurriculars and to make you look good or whatever like that. So that can get dangerous. But I think being okay with them being mad at you for you knowing what's good for them. I mean, that's radical.
I never,
But
I don't know if I'm glad to find out that I'm radical or not.
I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing because it's like, I think, yeah, it's, I would say less than like 10% of teachers think that way. Or maybe like less than 1%. You know, I don't know what the number is, but I would have to actually like go and do a study. But it seems like
I,
most teachers don't think that way.
I would say, at least in the band field and orchestra field, I would say it's a higher percentage. I would say 60 or 70%
Really?
are that way. But there's also some who, when they, like, I was concerned over every single student who dropped band. For some, it was the best decision for them, but I always examined myself. It's like, could I have done something differently? What could I have done? And there's some who don't care. There's a small percentage of band directors who are like, oh, that's fine that they dropped. And I've gotten better at not letting it bother me too much, but I still examine my. It's like, did I do something wrong? What am I missing?
Mm. So I think how you've taught, I don't know if it's changed since when you first started. I'm sure it has, but it seems like all the things that we're kind of joking about being radical are just like recently, maybe past 5 years, or
Where
at
they
least
become
I
radical?
think, yeah, that's where it's like, because you making us do push-ups wasn't crazy, but I think some students got really upset by it. And so they started complaining to the counselors and the principals or whatever about it. And then did you get in trouble? I'm assuming they actually talked to you and said, you can't be
You
making
know,
kids do
so
this.
the entire time I was at Falcon, I continued doing it, I think. And what I would tell
Yeah.
the counselors, so I think I started offering students a choice. It's like, okay, you can either do 10 push-ups or you can see me for a 10-minute lunch detention. And
Mm.
then they always picked except one or two occasions, they picked the
Yeah.
push-ups. And so I think that was the saving thing at that
Huh.
time. But the school I went to after that I was at for 5 years, I think about 2 years into that, someone said, "Oh, you can't do push-ups."
Really?
Yeah,
Why do you think, why do you think that that's changed? Do you think it was just the school, or do you think it's like the times have
I
changed?
I think the times have changed, and 26 years in education. I'll kind of give you it's not a scientific stat,
Right.
but I would say when I first started teaching in 1998, if I had to make a call home, 95% of the time the parents were like on my side. And very rarely I'd
Really?
have a parent who'd be like, "Oh, you're just picking on my kid, and you're you're a jerk," and that has shifted to where I would say two thirds of the parents, maybe not quite that high, but at least half of the parents are like, what you must have done something wrong if my kid never raises their voice,
Really?
or that my kid has never said F you to me, so it must be something you must be doing something wrong as a teacher.
Wow. What do you think that is? What do you think it's the parents have, or just they don't care as much? Do you think
I
that,
don't
what is
know.
it?
Parents have become so. I listened to a couple of psychology type call-in shows,
Yeah.
and the number of people who call and say, my 27-year-old, like, he doesn't have a job and
Yeah.
he doesn't do anything but play video games. And I told him, clean up your room. And he said, no way, Dad, I'm not doing that. What should I do? And it's like, okay, you need to put some pressure on that. Not
Yeah.
like instantly.
Yeah.
In the 70s and earlier, some people would be like instantly kick their kid out. They'd be like, all right,
Literally.
we're
Yeah.
tired of you and you're on the curb today. I
Yeah.
don't think that they should do that,
It's a balance.
but they should say, you know what? You're treating me like crap, and I've been letting you live in my basement for free. You've got 2 months, and after that, you need to have a job by then or do this by then. But then people are afraid to let their kids suffer in any way. Well, then they might be homeless, and well, then that might be how they have to learn. Some people are hard headed and have to learn that way. But actually, some of that is from 27 years. If you had a 27-year-old like that, it's from 27 years of poor parenting.
Yeah. You're not going to change that
And
in a
I'm not,
month.
in no way am I claiming to be a perfect parent, but I just want to give you my example that worked for me. We told all our kids, you have 4 years. We didn't pay for their college. They were on their own. You have 4 years to go to college, work for college, or just work and save up your money if you want, and or find yourself or whatever. But at the end of that 4 years, then you have to start paying rent. We never got to collect rent because I'll give you an example. One of my kids, he did about 1 year of college in that 4 years, and he was working and he was doing things, so it wasn't like he wasn't being lazy.
Yeah.
But when I said, okay, at you got 6 more weeks, and then I think the rent was like $200 a month. It was something really, really cheap. You're going to have to start paying rent. He found a roommate and he moved out.
Yeah.
And actually that was like, I felt like he really matured more after doing that than he did in that 4 years of finding himself. And then my youngest, same thing. It's like he was working, but it's like, okay, you're 4 years in now and we're going to start charging rent next month. He moved out.
Yeah. It would have been nice to have that extra cash though.
Yeah. So the one of them, I won't tell on which one, but one of them said, well, because I said eventually the rent's going to increase.
Yeah.
And he said, well, Dad, how much would the rent increase to? And rather than tell him a number, I said, well, it would increase so much that Mom and Dad would say, we hope he never moves out. And you would say, why am I paying this much when I could live on my own for cheaper?
Yeah. That's hilarious. You know what? Is that what is called tough love then, I think?
Yeah.
Because my parents they're similar. So when Emily and I got kicked out of the military, we won't go into that. I think you know why.
I know your story.
But we got kicked out. And so we had 5 days to find a place to live. And my parents were like, you can stay with us. But they charged us rent. And so it's like, even at that point when it's like, they could have just said, oh yeah, stay with us and we'll take care of you and we'll feed you and all this stuff. It was like, no, you're taking care of your family and you're paying rent and then you're going to find a place to live. So in a couple months, I think, I'm not sure how long, but yeah, within 2 or 3 months, we were out of there and living in another house. But if they were a little bit more kind, I guess, I don't know if kind is the right word, but if they were too soft, we could have taken advantage of that and we would be
you'd be there now and you wouldn't be as mature as you are now, because I think especially men need to become men. And I think that's something missing in our culture a lot, where it seems like a lot of things turn against boys or they treat grown men like boys. And life has just become, and not for everybody, but for a lot of people, it's become too easy, or we want to protect people from everything that could go wrong. Sometimes you learn from that. If you're like, oh, I think I want to move across the country. I've heard about a job opportunity or someone gave me a job. That can be something that ends up jumping into great things for your life. It could also be, it doesn't work out and then you have just your beat up car and you come back.
Yeah.
But if you never tried it, you don't know. If you play it safe all the time, you don't get to grow as much as a person.
You need a little bit of fire under your feet to get going, some motivation, and that comes from parents.
And sometimes from circumstances. So did the Marines really just gave you like 5 days?
Yeah. Yeah, we knew it was coming, but we didn't know when. And so Emily had Phoebe and had her maternity leave. And then as soon as she went back to work, they gave her a letter and said, you have 5 days to get off base. And I think the 4th day we spent at a hotel, like right off base. So it was quick. And then we drove, 20 hours about to get to Colorado.
Wow. Straight drive.
Yeah. Oh, I think we might've stopped.
And not knowing what the future held, what job situation was going to be. And
with a 3-month-old.
And see, I've been through something similar to that. And so thinking about that, it was very painful at the moment, but looking back, I can say I was grateful. And I don't know if you feel that way too, but it like opened up doors of opportunity I just never would have imagined.
Yeah, that's when I look back, I thank God for doing that. At least I, I know that he caught us. Like we're just like, God is going to take it from here. And so he caught us and got me running again. And I think I'm watching all of my friends who are getting out of the military now or around this time, and knowing what I've done in the past couple years while they've been doing the same thing I was doing. Like I feel like I've just done so much more that's better for me and better for my family. I think I've matured a lot more. I'm glad I started a family so young. What are your thoughts on that, starting family? Because it seems like that's not really common.
Well, nobody's done it both ways, but we were, so we,
that's a funny way of putting that. Yeah.
I think there's advantages both ways, but I know when we were, so I was in the military and I was at E4 when we had our first baby, and we had our first baby 13 months after we got married. So I was 21 and I was 20 when I got married and Susan was 19. And so 21 and 20 when we had our first child. And all through our 20s, most of our friends were like, hey, we're going skiing or we're going to do this. And what are you guys doing? We're changing diapers.
Right.
But we would go on little picnics. We were great at finding free things to do. And at the time, gas was under $1 a gallon. So if nothing else,
that's crazy. Radical.
If nothing else, we'd hop in the car and like go drive a couple of hours. We'd go in the mountains and explore. We were in Central Virginia at the time, and go explore and bring our lunch with us. And so now we actually have quite a few friends who are like our age, and they've still got teenagers at home. And we've been empty nesters for 6 years. And so now we're doing weekends away and doing fun things like that. And they're like, oh, I got to go. We've got a soccer tournament we're doing. And so that's why I say no one's done it both ways. But I'll tell you, from the grandparent side, my oldest grandchild is 12 and all the way down to age 1. And it's fun to be 57 and still have the energy to like get down on the floor and play with the little ones and have them climb over. The boys just like to climb over people for some reason. I don't know if you noticed that with your son.
He's climbing everywhere. It's insane. He'll just fall and then just start crying. And it's like, where were you? And he was on top of the couch, like reaching for something. Yeah, a lot more adventurous.
But we get to enjoy that. And I have a lot of friends who they're in their 70s and they're just now having like their first grandkids who are like toddlers. And it's like, I think I'm going to be kind of tired in I don't think I'll be able to get down on my hands and knees in my 70s, but maybe I would.
You take care of yourself. I think that's more than a lot of people your age, right? How do you think you compare to people your age? Like, I think you're still going on runs or bikes. Is that what you do? You bike now?
Yeah. I'm doing a triathlon in August.
See how many, you got to be in the top 1% of 57-year-olds. Cause no one does that. Not even
I don't know
people
about
my
that.
age.
I still struggle with my weight. So my goal is to move 7 miles a day at a minimum. And that could be biking, biking, running, walking. And so I do meet that goal. I have a fitness app that like so I'm always trying to like up that a little bit.
That's a lot.
And, but so I did a triathlon last August, and Susan was there and she took pictures of me, and I looked at the picture of me coming out of the swim and I said, "Hun, is that what I look like?" And she said, "Yeah, but I still love you."
Oh, no. That's a problem.
And it's like, I mean, it's not like I was obese.
Oh no.
But I looked at myself and it's like, I've got some extra pounds there that are pretty obvious in the swimsuit. When I'm on the bike and have a t-shirt on, it's like, oh, I look pretty good there. And so I determined to lose weight, and I got down to like 202 by the end of December. But I want to get down to 198. That last little bit's been hard. In fact, I went up to about 206. But the clothes are still fitting the same. So maybe it's because I did up my weight training. So maybe that
Getting stronger.
that is maybe 206 is fine. I don't know, but I still am aiming for 198.
Well, it seems like the other big thing is people your age starting to do testosterone and stuff like that. Have you thought about that? Are you on that?
No,
No?
no.
You wouldn't do it?
If a doctor said it's necessary
Yeah.
because something's not working right in your body, then I would
Huh.
consider it. But I think I
You're in
don't know
good health.
why. I don't know why most people would need that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just a pressure to be fit or look good or something. It seems that that's, I mean, with social media and stuff, everyone's comparing themselves. I'm sure that's a big part of it. But I think, yeah, it being a health thing makes the most sense. A lot of people are just doing it so because they want abs in their 60s or whatever.
I don't know if abs is
Is that not a
the
good goal?
norm. When,
I don't think
so
it's,
when you
yeah.
look at the movie stars from like the 40s and 50s and 60s, the ones that very rarely do the guys have like a shirt off, but when they do, they look like, I mean, they look fit, but they don't have six packs.
Right.
It just looks like a fit 55-year-old.
Yeah.
And I don't know when that became such a big thing.
Yeah.
So like I don't lift weights to try to impress anybody. I'm just trying to stay fit.
Yeah.
I wish I could remember. I heard a comedian one time. He said, like when you're in your 20s, you exercise, or you can do a like a PT test or something and not have ever exercised, and you say, "See, I'm in really good shape." And then you in your 40s and 50s, you're exercising to get in shape, and you can see the results. And he said, when you get in your 70s, it's like you're just trying to hang on to what you have. I'm not
Yeah.
quite at that point yet, but I just want to be in good shape because I want to be around to. There could be a whole big debate about whether God has determined our days specifically, like you're going to die at age 62 and a half,
Right.
or whether we have some control over that. And I can see good arguments for both ways. But if nothing else, we do have some control over the quality of that life. So
Yeah.
if for example, if someone was going to die at 80 and they could die at 80 and weigh 325 pounds,
Right.
or die at 80 and be in shape and weigh 190, then they're going to enjoy their 70s a lot more if they're at that 190 weight.
Do you think there's a responsibility to take care of your body when
I
it
think
comes
there
to,
is. I think when it talks about in the scriptures, it talks about our body being the temple of the Holy Spirit. And then if I'm fine. This has been a great year for me this last year because I feel like everything that I'm doing has been in my calling of what, like God has prepared me,
yeah.
everything I've been through for what I've done like this last year. But I want to continue to do that with the best energy that I have, and so to be able to do that, I have to exercise and work on that. Billy Graham, um, I think he was like 95 or 96. He lived to be 95 or 96.
Okay.
And when he was younger, he would do these crusades all over the world where he'd go for like 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks straight, preaching every night and preaching a different message every night. And when he was younger, he was able to do that. And his best book, though, that I read was the one that he wrote a couple of years before he died, and I think it was called "Finishing Well." And so I'm thinking, by the time he was in his 90s, he probably couldn't do much except write and be still. But it was
Yeah.
his best work, and by then his body was failing him. His wife had
Mm.
already predeceased him, and he had been through a lot. But it wasn't his time to go do crusades all over the world. In his 90s.
Mm. Yeah, and he wouldn't have been able to do that if he just treated his body terribly and then started
Right.
to decline physically and mentally. Huh. No, that's good. So what else? We'll wrap it up. What do you have going on moving forward? Do you have some big things planned or?
I've got that next book planned called
Okay.
Almost Everything I've Learned About Teaching Band. And then a lot is just going to be continuing what I've done. So about 40 or 50 music performances a year and 40 or 50 speaking engagements a year,
Yeah.
and the halftime teaching. And I think that will keep me pretty busy. Family, spending lots of time with family. About half of July feels like it's devoted to family, so that'll be good.
That's
And
cool.
I've got a free forgiveness course, and I just finished that recently, and hopefully people will take that. And
Where's that at?
it's on jamesdevine.net.
jamesdevine.net. You have such a cool last name.
Thank you.
Divine.
Right.
Okay. jamesdevine.net. And then what's the best way if people wanted to reach out to you? You have an email that you prefer people reach out to, or do you prefer they go to the website?
Probably the website. The email's on there, so they can find that
Okay.
on there, but that's probably the best way.
Do you want to plug your Instagram? What is that?
I don't even know what it is. I think it's James Devine CO, but I'm not sure.
Should we check that? I know I follow you.
I think all those links, like to Facebook and LinkedIn, I think are on the website.
And you also have a YouTube channel.
Right.
And so you're posting.
And I think that one is Divine James. So I know like the people who say you should have them all with the same handle so that people can just go. But I didn't think much of it back when I started all of those.
And you're posting like pretty much daily, right? Is that
sometimes it's daily?
Sometimes you take a little bit of a break.
Sometimes it's like a couple of weeks with nothing going on.
Yeah. And what inspires you to make those? You just thoughts in your head, and then.
So I think about the going back to the student who said, "Mr. Vine, you teach us about life, not just about band."
Yeah.
And all of those things usually happen in short conversations, like when you're greeting students at the door and maybe they tell you about a hard thing they're going through. And so most of the time they're short, inspirational things, like less than a minute
2 minutes
long.
or one. Yeah.
Yeah. And eventually I'll have to figure out where this will fit in with the time, but eventually I want to develop a saxophone course, like a online saxophone course. So some of my videos are saxophone clips as well.
Yeah, just let me know, because I would love to help you improve the audio, video, like social media, whatever you need help with. I'll help you.
Maybe I'll just hire you, and then I don't have to worry about it. I'll come here and record my podcast, and
there you go. There you go. I could be your co-host. I don't have any advice for the things that I've learned through music teaching, or what all of my years of music education. I don't have anything. I just sit here and say, yeah, that's good. That's good. So your Instagram is James Devine Colorado.
James Devine Colorado. Okay.
Yeah. And then you also do events and stuff, right? You can.
Yeah. So
people hire you to play.
I go play places and go speak places. I developed a new speech that seems to be the newest one that's the most popular, and it's called Empower Your Future, and it's goal setting mainly for teenagers, but it could be tailored to anybody, but goal setting for teens. Because here I am, I'm not saying it to brag, and I know there's people who are way ahead of where we're at, but on a teacher's salary, and my wife just has a regular job too. She's not like a doctor or anything.
Yeah.
And through persistence and saving a little bit each month, we're 2 years away from being millionaires. And so that's pretty awesome to think that. And a lot of people don't quite understand when you're a millionaire, it just means that your assets and you subtract your liabilities, it equals $1 million or more. So it's not like we have money to burn, and I drive a 20-year-old car with 251,000 miles on it. And so it's not like you wouldn't see it by seeing our lifestyle, but our balance sheet shows that.
Millionaire, it meant different if your parents would have said that they were millionaires, like back 50 years ago.
I think it still means something now too.
Oh my goodness, $1 million. I think it's hard to imagine. Yeah, that's a lot of you get a lot of instruments for $1 million.
Yeah.
Hang them up all on the wall, have a whole. That's not the plan?
No.
Oh,
no.
Okay.
And about a third of that is the equity in our house. So
yeah,
that's not something you can spend unless you move or sell. Yeah.
Yeah. You guys plan on traveling at all?
We travel. We
buy an RV and
we have a
go
travel
out?
trailer. It's a 1978 travel trailer, and we go
Yeah.
out at least once a month camping in that. And but probably so if I ever do take earlier, you were talking about like the future. I don't plan on ever completely retiring, but
Yeah.
Lord willing, when I turn 70, I think I'll take like a 6-month sabbatical, and we'll take our travel trailer and go across the country
Yeah.
and decide what the next phase of our life will be if God gives us good health and
Yeah.
continued success.
That'd be cool. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to see you grow up and be a man and have 2 kids and a wife, and it's cool to see all those things happen for you.
Well, thank you. And thank you to our viewers and our listeners, and we'll see you guys next week.